Everyone, and welcome back to another TFT Masterclass. Today we will be talking about 3 hidden OP comps that you should be playing on 14.16b if you don't want to be contested but still top 4. We made a couple changes into our Fit Gamer TFT tournament, so we've added an extra category here of Masters Plus. We still have our actual Silver to Diamond, where the main focus is going to be helping players, casual players, gain experience in a competitive play and also learn from our bootcamp. And then the Masters Plus category will have a higher prizing, but also a higher level of competition. If you're interested in this, make sure you check out the links in the description and the pinned comment. And there are limited spots, so make sure to sign up now. So the 3 comps we'll be talking about today are all going to be reroll compositions. The first one is going to be Cassiopeia reroll with Shapeshifter frontline. Then we're going to move on to Wukong and Hecarim reroll, where we're going to be playing around Preservers and then multi-strikers with our Hecarim. At the very end, we're going to do a Q&A for those who are watching this live in the chat and a recap at the very end. Alright, so let's get straight into it. So Cassiopeia Shapeshifter reroll. This was a composition at the very start of the set where you would do Cassiopeia plus Syndra. So now it's a little bit different, and it's a little bit back because of the recent buffs to Cassiopeia and also the recent buffs to all the Shapeshifter units. Since we're going to be rerolling Cassiopeia and Shyvana in this composition, we're going to be staying level 6, and this is a magic damage composition where we are stalling as long as possible for our Cassiopeia to ramp up with her Rage Blades. There's a couple conditions that you need to have in order to play this composition. As I mentioned, Rage Blades for sure. So this means you're starting the game with either a bow, either a rod, or ideally both. And also this comp is rather augment dependent, which means you want to have either like a reroll augment at the very start or something to do with items. So either like Horn items or like Pandora's items, something along these lines will really help cater your game towards this specific direction. So let's get into the pros and cons. So why even play this board? Is it good? What's the good parts and what are the bad parts? Well, the good parts is most of the time this is uncontested. Whenever any player sees Cassiopeia in their shop or get it from an orb, it's almost an insta-sell. Cassiopeia is just 2 gold for most players. So in this case, Cassiopeia almost always uncontested, which is great. If not, players are just holding a few copies. The same idea or scenario with Swain and Nico. Not many players reroll these units, so maybe it's just 3 copies held by another like Shapeshifter players. However, none of this is rerolled. Shyvana is a little bit more played. Sometimes people reroll Shyvana. However, most of the time you'll still be uncontested, so that's a very good pro of this particular composition. As I mentioned, Shapeshifters plus Cassiopeia got a lot of buffs in 14.17, which brought this comp back into light. And then also, the good news about this is although Karma Preservers is a rather relevant composition on today's patch, as we saw during the Syndra patch, while players are just rerolling on 6, sometimes you find Karma a lot early, you scout around, there's like 4 Syndra players, and 3 of them have Karma just from rolling on 6. So being able to find this Karma is going to be very good, and will replace our Syndra since we don't want to be rerolling Syndra in this composition. The reason why is we want to have 3 frontline items, 3 backline items, which means there are no leftover items for our Syndra, and currently Cassiopeia is stronger than Syndra on this patch. So those are the pros. Moving on to the cons, this is a very item dependent composition. Cassiopeia best in slot is Rage Blade, and 1 more bow item, either a Shiv, a Giant Slayer, or a 3rd Rage Blade, which means that you're using infinite bows or using infinite rods. So this means that your item economy can quickly be ruined. Let's say after Krugs, you have no bow or rod drops, you have like sword and gloves. Well, sword is very hard to kill in this composition, same with gloves. So very item dependent, and item economy can be tough. Also, since this is a stall composition, you are rather countered by fast-paced boards, for example, Warriors, or like a 3-star Ari, which just deletes units extremely fast. So we want to be fighting boards that have a very slow tempo and also other ramping boards, which will allow our backline to ramp up as well with Incanter plus our Rage Blades. So let's talk about how to actually play the composition. So on level 6, you're going to play 4 Shapeshifters and then 2 Incanters. The Incanter, preferably you have Syndra. I mean, you'll probably find a Syndra during your roll down. If you can't find her, then just play Ziggs for a turn. But you'll be leveling to 6 on 3-2 or 3-5, just depending on your spots, if it's an Econ Galaxy or Econ Krugs or etc. And then roll down for 4 Shapeshifters in the front line. So ideally it's going to be Shyvana, Nico, Swain. At least you could play Jace for a little bit over one of the 3 costs if you don't have one of the 3 costs at that time. And then Cassiopeia 2 plus an Encounter on your initial roll down. This will help you stabilize, and then you're going to econ back up to 50 gold and then roll back down. You're really going to want to be prioritizing your Cassiopeia items, which as I mentioned is going to be Rage Blade times 2 plus 1 more, either a Shiv, which is best, a Giant Slayer, or a third Rage Blade. In our front line, we're going to be rerolling either Nico or Shyvana. Ideally, we want to be rerolling Shyvana. However, if you have an augment that gives you a Mogul's Mail, so either like Shimmer Scale Essence or just all that shimmers, then you want to put that Mogul's Mail on the Nico and reroll her instead with the Magic Tank items. These are going to be like Crown Guard, Helm, Vow, and Warmox is also good. Crown Guard is a little bit tougher to get because we are going to be committing a lot of our rods to these Cassiopeia Rage Blades. As I mentioned, you can use infinite bows plus rods. Rage Blades, Red Buff, or Morello Karma is going to be our source of anti-heal. So these are more bows, more rod, more bows, more rods, more rods, more rods. So we can use a lot of bows, we can use a lot of rods. We'll always be taking these on carousel in this composition. And as I mentioned, gloves plus swords are going to be our worst components. The best way we can kill these components, apart from just reforging them, is either putting like Giant Slayer on our Cassiopeia or our Karma, Steadfast on some of our frontline, TG on some of our frontline, or Shojin for our Karma. Best install artifacts. So a lot of artifacts are really good in this composition. Main users are going to be our Shyvana and also our Cassiopeia. So I'll talk about our Shyvana for a second. If you think about her ability, as soon as Shyvana's cast, she's going to like fly towards a large clump of enemies, stunning them. So Suspicious Trenchcoat is extremely good on her. Being able to get multiple instances of the stun after they split is great. Same idea with Trickster's Glass. There's a couple other artifacts that are also really good, like Death Defiance, Eternal Winter. Remember that Shyvana actually does a decent amount of damage, so putting these artifacts on her are quite good. The two artifacts that are really good on Cassiopeia are going to be Zonya's and Gambler's Blade. So Zonya is very good on her because she is essentially like a hyper carry. So by stacking up all these Rage Blades, as soon as it gets later into the fight, that Zonya's those few seconds of stasis while she is still able to attack will allow her to really clutch out some fights. I think Gambler's Blade is essentially another Rage Blade, but sometimes you get this just quote unquote for free, either from like the region or a portal, and it'll also help you generate some gold. I would stray away from building anything else. The worst, or I'd say like the minimum I'd go down on like the tier of artifacts would be Wit's End. I wouldn't go anything farther than this, so like no snipers, no RFC, or no fish bones. As mentioned, if you do have a Moguls, then you're going to be putting this on Nico instead of the Shyvana, or also on the Nasus, depending on what you have. But you don't want to be putting Moguls on the Shyvana because Nico and Nasus, what they have instead of, or what they have over Shyvana is some source of self-sustain. While Shyvana has no self-sustain, she just has damage and CC. So this is how you cap out your board. You're eventually going to be playing 6 shapeshifters, just having an insanely tanky front line and helping or allowing your Cassiopeia to really ramp up. And then Karma is going to be holding your source of anti-heal. Another reason why this composition is extremely good is you have a lot of augments that really help you out. So I'll go over each one since we're only talking about 3 comps this video. Shimmer Scale Essence gives you 2 of the best items that you need. Gambler's Blade for Cassiopeia, so that will replace one of the Rage Blades or this 3rd bow item. But Shiv is really good on Cassiopeia, and then Moguls on that Nico, and then you're already set to go. Shapeshifter +1 will allow you to play 6 shapeshifters earlier on level 7, and also will allow you to eventually play 8 shapeshifters once you hit level 9. Living Forge is also very good, allows you to get a lot of artifacts that you need. 2 Tanky is extremely good in shapeshifters specifically. In this case, you'll be playing 2 Shyvanas and 2 Nikos. These shapeshifter units will get bonus HP from this augment, which scales with their shapeshifter transform. So it's extremely good here. Blinding Speeds giving us a red buff, a Ginsu's plus another bow. So this is really, really good in this composition. Learn to Spell, we're just infinitely stacking Pandora's items / component buffet, allowing us to get this. Pandora's Bench, allowing us to get all of our units. And Eternal Growth Plus specifically. Eternal Growth Regular is not that good. However, Eternal Growth Plus is great. A couple other ones like Priz Ticket is very good for rerolling. You Have My Bow gives you a bow and more starting attack speed. Ascension because we're a stall comp. Giant and Mighty and Immovable Object also helping with the stall. And Inspiring Epitaph and Martyr because we are playing shapeshifters. You want to be playing any AD items or Thieves Goes on Briar is good, and then your additional tank items over onto your Nasus. One thing to note is you don't really want to be building Sunfire Cape that early into the game. It's much better to put the anti-heal on your Karma, either or Morello or a red buff, and this will apply the wound and burn defects a lot more efficiently. And the very, very last thing is regarding Shyvana positioning, you want to be positioning in front of the largest clump, ideally on the same side as the enemy carry. This way she'll cast and fly into the large group instead of just being on the opposite side, casting on some units that don't matter, and then being targeted last after your entire board is wiped out. So definitely give this composition a go. It really depends on your 2-1 start. It is rather niche. However, as you see here, there are a lot of augments that really help out this composition. All right, moving on to our second one here, something quite exciting. I love playing this one, Hecarim Multi-Striker Reroll. So Hecarim recently got huge buffs. As you see here, HP, mana, the passive charge AD scaling went up 70%. AP goes down, but you're not building AP on Hecarim anyway, apart from like Titans. And then also his cleave AD went up as well. So a lot of buffs. This is going to be a 3-cost reroll, so we will be rerolling on level 7. As opposed to the previous comp, which was a stall comp, now we're going to be playing a physical damage fast-paced burst comp, where we want Hecarim to be getting a takedown as soon as possible to proc his passive and get that charge, dealing a ton of damage, which hopefully kills it and then allows you to get another charge. So that's why the fast-paced burst really comes into effect, and you want to be positioning on the weak side of the enemy board to get that kill ASAP. Couple conditions to play here. So there are a lot of artifacts that Hecarim uses really efficiently. Silvermere Dawn is one, giving you a ton of AD and being able to stun units. Special Cutlass, being able to assassinate some units. Same kind of idea with Prowler's Claw. And then Death Stance or Death Defiance, Mittens, and Triforce are all great as well. For your early game, you want to play this composition, or at least angle into it if you have 80 Bruiser Opener, so either like Asterix, BT. Titans is fine too, it's fine with the stats, but I would much rather prefer Asterix, just give you that tankiness, and you both get 50 AD eventually from both of these items anyway. And the very last thing to note is if you read Hecarim's ability, when he actually casts, so once you get this to this 40 mana, he becomes mana locked, and there's no like initial burst of damage. Now just for the next seconds, whenever he attacks, he just hits adjacent enemies. So what this means is Hecarim is a unit that has an uptime rather than a burst cast. So during this uptime, you really want to be attacking as much as possible, or at least not being interrupted. Henceforth, why we want to be building a QS, or at least having a Banshee's Veil, so then we're immune to crowd control, and we're not getting stunned for even like 2 out of these 6 seconds, and then 33% of our damage, or 33% of the uptime, we're just not doing any damage. So that's why QS and Banshee's Veil is so good on Hecarim. That's a quick intro into the composition, some more pros here. So Hecarim 3 is rather rare. Not a lot of players know how to position against this, and they don't really realize that, oh, I need to put my main tank right in front of the Hecarim, so then he's not able to get any like resets or any takedowns with his charges. This composition uses a lot of augments, such as the previous ones. However, these are more going to be like melee sustain catered, so like Keepers, Row Rejuvenation, uses a lot of items, same with Orin items, and then also support items as well, fishing for that Banshee's Veil. And then last but not least, as you just saw, Hecarim had an insane amount of buffs, also a 5 multi-striker buff, which allows you to have a stronger mid-game stabilization and cap out higher once you hit that Hecarim 3. Moving over to the cons, Hecarim is unfortunately the 8th most contested unit in Diamond Plus. So in some lobbies, it can be extremely difficult to hit this 3-star, especially if there are multi-striker players in the lobby. Sometimes players are playing like Arcana late game, so your Hecarim might be really contested and held by other players. You're also countered by single target burst / like super tank comps, especially if you're on the wrong side. So Veigar 3, like Wukong 3, Cog / Shoshana 3, you'll either just be like bursted down, especially if you're on the wrong side, or you'll just get stuck without having anything to like charge or reset on, such as the Wukong 3. And the very last one is you're reliant on 7 multi-strikers for a high cap. This is always the case for 7 multi-striker boards. However, it is a little bit tougher to get just because we're spending so much time on level 7 rolling, and it'll take longer to hit Hecarim 3-star than, for example, would to hit like Jax or Ashe 3. So how are we actually going to play this? As I mentioned, you want to be positioning to get an easy takedown ASAP. So go on the weak side of the enemy board. Don't get stuck on any main tank. Best in slot Hecarim. Well, of course, you want to be prioritizing Hecarim items first because he's your main carry. Quicksilver for sure, and then either BT or Hodge, some source of healing. And then your last one will either be like Titan, Asterix, or an IE. If you have Hodge, you're more inclined to go IE. However, if you have BT, you're more inclined to go either Titans or the Asterix. We also want to be re-rolling Shen as well. As you saw in this previous patch, Shen also got a buff to each of his star levels regarding his durability percent. So actually 3-starring Shen is going to be quite good and will increase his tankiness a lot. Shen will help our Hecarim out with some utility. So some Shred or like Sunder for the local enemies, Sunfire so then they can't heal up as easily, and then a third item, Vow, allows them to cast easier Redemption, Crown Guard, Warmocks. These are all fine. And then Kalista will be our secondary carry. Her items are quite simple. Rage Blade plus Do. These can be just any damage items. Death Blade, Lost Whisper if you don't have an Even Shroud, Runeon's GS, these are all fine. And your Arcana Signifier wants to be going on Hecarim for that bonus AD and that damage reduction. This is how you're going to cap out your board. You just add 2 more multi-strikers. The hard one to hit is Camille, and also you have to be level 9. Best in slot augments to go, multi-striker crest or crown. This allows us to drop the Ash and then play this composition on level 8. Press the attack is going to be quite good into this composition because we are going vertical multi-striker, unleash the beast. In this case, we are definitely going BT, Steric, and Quicksilver. Portable Forge, trying to get that Silver Mirror Dawn or Death's Defiance, Mittens, Triforce. There are so many that Hecarim can use, and if you had to make a Radiant item with your Refractor, it will be Radiant BT for the Hecarim. This is a melee composition, so Keepers 1 and 2 will always be good, and then support Golem 1 and 2, fishing for that Banshee's Veil. So definitely go for this composition. It is a ton of fun once you hit your Hecarim 3, and you'll be one-shotting enemies and then charging, and then going for that extra or secondary one-shot as well. And finishing off here, we have Wukong Preserver's Reroll. This is going to be a level 7 2/8 3-cost reroll composition. It's a little bit awkward. I'll talk about why that is, where we want to be 3-starring our Wukong and having him as our solo frontliner. This is another stall composition where we are primarily dealing magic damage. However, there is some physical damage for some lines that we could play. Conditions to play this. So you will be playing towards an AP line, just playing flexible, like either playing like Karma or playing like Rise. Maybe you have like a red buff slammed and then like an adaptive, something like that. Then you hit 3-2 spin to win, and then this is a clear indicator that you could go into this composition, or you have all that shimmers or just some form of augment that gives you a mogul, so either like Portable Forge or Shimmer Scale Essence, and you have like gargoyles or these gargoyle components, plus you have no bows. And no bows means that you can't play Jinx because Jinx need 3 bows into her kit. So that is how you want to be kind of angling into this specific composition. This is what your board is going to look like on level 7, where you have Wukong on the front line. Ideally, you just have 3 gargoyles on him. If you do hit that 3-2 spin to win, then all you have to do is take out our gargoyles and put a BT instead on the Wukong. Pros and cons. So pros, caps super high this composition once you hit that Wukong 3, and also you have some really strong 5-cost units that you will be playing along with this, which is going to be Morgana and Milio, and has a very high win rate because of the tankiness and the backline, or at least the quality of the backline units. Some cons. Because Wukong is a 3-cost unit, ideally you want to be re-rolling on level 7. However, the rest of the board, like these 2 don't matter, sorry Bards, sorry Zillion, the rest of the board is going to be 4 or 5 costs, which means we want to be rolling on level 8 for those odds and also 5-cost odds. So it's a little bit awkward. What I would do is I would go level 7 first, obviously, and then roll down to stabilize. You might not hit all of this. You might just have to play some other units like Cassiopeia +1, or even like 4 Chrono if you have the chance for that, like Vex plus Jax. But definitely go for that Wukong and try to hit at least 1 Karma. From there, I would try to go level 8 and then reroll on level 8 for that Wukong. Your chances of hitting 3-cost units goes from 40 to 32. So it's not horrible, and this way your chances of getting 4-cost units and 5-cost units increase substantially. Another con here is we have no consistent burst damage. Yes, once you hit like a Gwen 2, and if you're able to get 3 items on her, you will. However, she's not as consistent, and we're mostly just like a stall AoE dot comp. And also, this composition can contain many contested units depending on the lobby. Like Rakan is a very contested unit, Gwen, Fiora, and Karma is as well. So it really depends on the lobby. There are some pros, of course, there are some cons. But overall, it is still a quite good comp. Your Karma items wants to be blue buff, red buff +1. This last one can be rather flex. It could be Rabadons, it could be Archangels, it can be Nashers. This is fine. As I mentioned, triple Gargoyle on your Wukong. I think Gwen uses melee AP items. So Spark for sure, and then her other 2 can be flex, either like a BT plus a blue buff. It could be Hodge JG. There are a good amount of units or a good amount of items she can hold, and then Fiora will hold AD bruiser items such as like BT Sterix, i.e. BT Sterix, Edgenite, along these lines. This is how you'd cap out your board. You eventually add Morgana as well, and then Milio, and then your board is quite set. You have a lot of units that can hold good items, and then you have an insane front line with your Wukong with some gargoyles. Best in slot augments to play along with this composition, of course, is going to be that spin to win that you can only hit on 3-2. So you'd never really go into a game thinking I'm going to play Wukong Preservers. It's more so you have like AP flex line, and then you get kind of tailored into the specific direction. Preserver +1 will allow you to eventually have 5 Preserver. All that Shimmer/Shimmer Scale Essence for that Mogul's Mail combat caster is going to be quite good in here as well, because we're casting so often. And then Radiant Refractor, if you have this augment, then you will be making a Radiant Gargoyles on that Wukong. Because we have so many other carries as well, item augments are quite good as well, like Big Grab Bag over Encumbered. Magic Wand will give us a rod and also some AP. Teaming Up is good, and then Component Buffet is good as well. That will allow us to really have a higher chance of hitting this BIS or just our BIS in general. So that has been everything for today. I'll do a quick recap of the 3 compositions that we talked about and then end things off with a Q&A. So we talked about 3 comps today. All 3 were reroll. We talked about Cassiopeia, Wukong, and Hecarim. 2 of them are stall comps, so Cassiopeia plus that Wukong Preserver Karma are going to be stall comps where you're just where you're getting stronger the longer the fight goes. Either you're scaling with Incancer, either you're scaling with your Rage Blades. But both of these compositions are really good into like slower fights, but get counted more towards really fast-paced fights like Warriors or like Mages or Ahri. And then Hecarim here we have as well, a very fun composition, our melee comp where you're going 3-star Hecarim, you're going Bruiser items, and after you hit that 3-star Hecarim, you're trying to push levels to try to get that Camille and go 7 multi-striker. So that has been everything for today. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you sign up for the Fall Cup no matter what rank you are, either in the Silver to Diamond category or in the Masters Plus. It's a great experience. It's going to be fun and you have a chance to win some big money. So that's it. Have a great night and I'll